All right, we live?
Yep.
Let's get into it.
Let's do it. So you're probably wondering, not another couple starting a podcast. Yes, we're cringing too.
But the reason why we started this is so many people have been asking us who we are, what we do, why we do it. So we decided to take all those different discussions and put them into a podcast.
So we're officially launching the Uncorked podcast today. It's going to be about business, personal branding, and how to work together without killing each other. So
sounds about right. So before we get into this, because this is our first episode, I definitely think it's the best thing to do is just introduce ourselves a little bit. But instead of me introducing myself and you introducing you, I think we should introduce each other. So if you had to describe me in 3 words, what would you do? What would you say?
This could be dangerous. Feel like entrepreneur. We've always been that. For sure a marketer, definitely. And I want to go out on a limb here and say a future aspiring poker player.
You heard it here first.
Professional.
And if I had to talk about Ange, I definitely would say brand marketer because she's been in that space, climbing that corporate ladder. I would say content creator because everyone knows about Champagne Ange. And lastly, because you threw a good one out there, I'm also going to be talking, or she's also a self-proclaimed DIY contractor. So, and this is with all the HomeSense runs, winners runs, always renovating our house. So that's that.
HomeSense, if you're watching. Please
and lastly, we're also Frenchie parents, so you're going to see Gigi one day. Maybe Gigi will be featured in the podcast. We'll see.
There we go.
With that being said, let's get into it. Episode 1, we are talking about personal branding, and I think the best place to start with this is just to talk about what personal branding is and just why it's so important in today's world.
I think the biggest thing is people forget that everyone has a personal brand. Whether you're promoting yourself or you're just showing up in life, like you're known for something. So it goes all the way back to being a kid. Like you were the athletic one, you were the funny one, whatever it was, you always have a brand. And I think the cool thing about personal branding is like you have that opportunity, if you are being more mindful about it, to guide your brand in the direction you want. And I think that's why in today's world, everyone should have that personal brand, because it gives you an opportunity to like own a space. And it doesn't have to be something formal. Like I'm not talking about, find your niche, promote yourself, this, that. But like it could just be, I want to be that person that, people come to for doing makeup, decorating, whatever it is. Like it could be a fun hobby. And I think that's what's really unique about it.
And what are you top of mind for? So it gives you credibility. It gives you visibility so people know who you are. I think we were talking about career advancement too, having a personal brand in a specific space. Like you definitely can have your career advance. I think the most important part, and this is the one I think I've experienced the most, is just that more confidence. When we walk into rooms now, we know who we are. We have a better understanding of what we do, and it's just really helped us in our careers and just meeting new people.
Yeah, and I think one thing too that people have to keep in mind is like there's also a lot of misconceptions about personal brands, right? Like people think that you need to be super formal with building your brand, that you need to have this really strong reach, following. That's not necessarily true. So I think what we should do is just like run through some myths that
It's
people
game time.
It's game time.
So I think we'll do some myths and realities. So I'm going to say a myth, you tell us a reality off that.
Let's do it.
Myth number 1, I think this is the biggest one out there, is you need a large following to have a successful personal brand.
I feel like that's fully a myth. I think if anything, sometimes people who have smaller followings have even more successful brands because they have that engagement with their audience. And I mean, like, this doesn't just have to be social media. It can be anything. Like, followership is in the real world too, right? In your everyday life, like, people do look up to you. If you work a more traditional job, you might even manage a team. And I think that the one thing that you have to keep in mind is that if you're just showing up and like being authentic and you're doing it because you want to share with your audience, regardless of how big or small, like you can make an impact. It's that whole thing that is like, you honestly only have to make one person's day better to make a difference. So regardless of how many people you're reaching, like you're still making a difference. And I think over time, the cool part is that your following will grow naturally because people will see that what you're doing is genuine and you're adding value to their lives.
Changing one person's life one at a time.
One at a time.
Next myth here is personal branding is important only to celebrities and influencers.
No, I think it goes back to what we were saying initially about that, like, everyone is known for something. And whether you connect the dots and realize that's a brand, or you just are kind of thinking, like, oh, that's what that person's known for, like, you're still known for something and you still have a brand, even if you're not a celebrity. Obviously, celebrities and influencers do a really good job of building their brand, but everyone is known for something.
Yeah. And then the last myth, I think, again, one that we hear so often is that personal branding is all about self-promotion and just bragging about yourself.
That's a hard one. I think that it is a balance, and some people do it really well. I think that, it's important to celebrate your achievements, and you want to be able to kind of have that moment to recognize what you're doing well. But I think at the same time, like, it allows you to build a relationship and just kind of get out there. And I think that that's really what matters more than anything. And it doesn't necessarily need to come across as bragging, especially if you do it in a tasteful way. And I think 9 times out of 10, most of your audience will be the ones bragging for you, because they really look up to what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I think that comes through with a lot of people that others look up to in, like, the celebrity space. I don't know how you feel about that one.
I've seen that with your following specifically. Like, when you post something, you have hundreds of people reposting it, sharing it with their friends. And again, that whole idea of people will brag for you if you post that valuable content.
100%.
With that being said, though, I know we talked about myths. We kind of debunked them a little bit. If people are wondering, like, how do I stay top of mind with their audience? How did they keep them engaged? I think you've done an amazing job with that. So I'd love to hear a little bit more on what you recommend.
I think the hardest thing is consistency. I think everyone, like, has their one moment of fame and they're like, yep, this is it. Like, this is what I'm going to be known for. But then they fall off. And I get it. Like, consistency is really hard. It can be super draining. We're overwhelmed in, like, the media space all day. Like, I think I read a stat once that between leaving your house and driving home, like, you've received 100 messages from different marketing advertisements. Your phone amplifies that. So I get why people get burnt out, but consistency is so big. And I think that's a huge one.
I think number 2, I want to jump in here too, because I feel like I think I do this pretty well with my audience, is just the engagement aspect. So engaging with your audience, super valuable. I think engagement is a two-way street. We obviously do a lot of marketing consulting, and we always talk to people about building their brands. And the first thing they always ask is, like, why is it that I don't get engagement on my posts? And I ask them the first thing, I'm like, are you engaging with other people? Are you responding to people? Are you responding to comments, DMs, mentions, tags, all that stuff? And most of the time people say no. And I always, again, this is me going back and quoting the Bible, and I'm like, do unto others what you want done to yourself. So if you're trying to engage with others, or if you want engagement yourself, like, number one thing is engage with others. Because like I said, engagement is a two-way street. How to take that engagement one step further, I also think asking people for their advice, what did they think, putting up polls, seeing what people want to see more of. Again, engagement doesn't always have to mean, oh, they commented on my post, but if you're wondering what to post, the best thing to do is just ask your audience.
Yeah, totally. And I think that kind of ties in nicely to the whole, like, offering value and, like, being authentic, because I feel like when you're giving them something that they actually can benefit from, automatically, like, you're going to come out on top there. And I feel like that's a huge piece of it. And if you're doing it and coming from a place of, like, being authentic, I think it goes a super long way for people.
Yeah, being authentic, and even that personalization aspect. So because what I've seen, and this happens with all these multi-level marketing companies that I've seen, is they're given one templated formula. To all you multi-level marketing brands out there
Put down the
that
templates.
are building the personal brands, put away the templates and personalize your experience with your audience. Like I said, a lot of people, they read 10 steps on how to engage with the audience, and they do those same things. And what they're forgetting is that personalized aspect.
It needs
like,
to be unique.
Every person in this world is different. Like, even if we're both marketers, we both run content accounts, we both do a bunch of similar stuff, but we still have our own personality and our own characteristics.
The approach is so different. And it's cool that you mentioned that, because I had someone mentioned this to me before. When I'm scrolling, I don't even have to see your profile picture on your post, and I know it's your style. And I think that's kind of a tell of like, you're doing a good job showing up consistently and authentically when someone can recognize how you show up online just from seeing it. And I think that's kind of what everyone wants to have. Truthfully.
Yeah, when we do branding, even like some of the like B2B
Ideal
clients,
brand,
I always tell them, I'm like, hey, when we're building a like brand and
Take
when
your
we're
logo away.
talking about it, like what happens if we took your logo away or took your Instagram handle away? Would people recognize that that is your post? And how you do that is that personalization aspect.
Yeah, branding 101.
Yeah, exactly. But with that being said, I do have a final kind of question here, and I think this is for everyone that is listening to us and they're trying to figure out like, okay, I learned a little bit about personal branding. I learned about the myths and the realities of it. But if someone was out here right now trying to start their own personal brand, is there some advice you can give them?
Yeah. My biggest thing would be kind of stop focusing on performance and like get out of your own head. Like just start, post what you would want to see if you were the one on the receiving end of it. And I think people sometimes get too caught up in the metrics, and like we live in a numbers world, but a lot of those metrics are vanity metrics, and it doesn't really tie to, you know, your definition of success. Like if you're doing a good job, the performance will come. I feel like and you're gonna like talking about this, that we always get is like, guys, like I can't start because I don't have a camera.
This is the one that I deal with.
I don't shoot
all the
anything on a
time.
camera.
So
it's an iPhone.
Again, a lot of people see what we do, and I think one of the biggest things is like, oh, I'm waiting until I get my new phone, or I'm waiting until I can get a budget to get a videographer out. And the first thing I always say is like, hey, if you can't stay consistent, if you can't do the minimum,
don't buy the equipment.
It's not going to happen when you
Do
suddenly
not buy
have all
the
that
equipment.
stuff. So my biggest advice to you guys is whatever phone you have right now, if it shoots video, if it takes photos, start with that. And I think perfect example is Kiefer and Ang brand. Like we started off with just an iPhone, no
Not
lighting.
Not even a new iPhone.
It was like an iPhone 11 or something like that.
Yeah.
We started with that, and basically after every couple months, we were like, okay, what can we upgrade to make the quality better?
One thing at
and
a
like
time.
every couple months, we upgraded one thing. So we went from just your phone to a phone and a light, and then we started doing backdrops, and then we upgraded your phone. We got better lights, we got better mics, and then we got a better camera, and constantly we're just upgrading it, right? So biggest advice, do not start, or don't wait until you get all that equipment. You can start right away.
100%.
I think the last one, and this is the one that I really love, is the idea of networking, collaborating, and learning. Networking basically essentially is getting to know more people in the industry. It gives you credibility.
It's also really inspiring. Like people are doing really cool things, and I feel like it gets your creative juices flowing.
Yeah, I think when we go to those like PR events and stuff, perfect opportunities.
Yeah.
Like I said, and if you don't get invited to those, like find people that do what you do, send them a DM and be like, let's meet up for a coffee. Let's go to a restaurant. Let's chat. Let's do some cool stuff together, which comes to my second one, which is collaboration. So huge is collaboration. I think when you start working with people in your industry, the biggest part, besides obviously doing a partnership or collaboration together, I think the coolest thing is now you're tapping into their audience. They have the similar audience as you, and now you tap into that. So networking, collaboration, and I think when you're doing both of those, the most important part is just learning, right? So I don't think I know everything. I know you don't think you know everything, but and we're constantly.
I thought you were gonna say I know you don't know
No.
everything. I was like, all right, bold statement.
But no, I do think that learning is a huge part on this, and basically, and you know me, like I'm super. I'm not too much of a books guy. I prefer trying things, speaking to people, and learning. And I think learning from others will take you levels up, way
100%.
much more than any book, any course, anything like that can take you.
You also learn how not to make mistakes too by learning from others. Don't make their mistakes. So it goes a long way.
Yeah.
So I feel like we talked a lot about personal branding here, and I think if we had to do like our top 3 takeaways from this one, I don't know, for me personally, it's everyone has a brand. Like the brand marketer in me, anything I look at, like it is a brand. And I think that's a huge one for me. I'm
going to say consistency. I think everyone always talks about it. And I always get people that say like, hey, what is it that I can do? Can you help me with my brand?
Yeah.
And I challenge everyone. I'm like, hey, listen, I would love to help you. I'll do whatever you want me to do. But the first thing I want you to do is be consistent in posting. And I'll give them a challenge. I'll be like, in the next 30 days, post every other day for 30 days. And try that. Once you do that, hit me up and I'll tell you the next steps.
Totally.
So I would say consistency.
Yeah. And for me, it's just cut the excuses. Like just start. you know, like you're probably your biggest enemy, and it's just human nature. Like we're always going to try to make life easier for ourselves. You can come up with 1,000 excuses for anything, but I think if like it's something you want to do, and I'm not saying go build your brand, you know, but anything you want to do, like if you just start each day, you're taking one step closer to achieving it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With that being said, I think it's time to outro this.
Let's outro it.
Okay, well, guys, thank you guys so much for watching the first episode of Uncorked. If you guys like this, episode, if you want to hear more of us, definitely like this podcast, subscribe, share it with someone, and we'll be back for episode 2.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.